Hello, welcome back to the latest episode of You Are My Boro. Myself, Dom Sean, Scott Wilson. Apologies because we have had a fair few asking when this episode was going to come up. The plan was Friday, but then we were
something happened.
Waiting for development. Saturday, obviously a game. Sunday, a fair bit happened as well. So here we are recording on Monday evening, and a fair bit has happened since we last recorded. So there's obviously only one place to start. Adilson Malander's Charlotte FC got knocked out of the MLS playoffs. So Rob Edwards is going to be the next Wolves head coach. I can't remember where we were at the last time we recorded. I think it was very early doors. Well, it was after Leicester, wasn't it? So
it was post Leicester, pre the Friday press conference being called off, wasn't it?
Yeah. So again, timeline of things. Tuesday night, and I think we said this last week, Tuesday night when he kind of refused to rule it out for the second time, alarm bells started ringing, and then it became clear really in the 24 to 48 hours after, didn't it? Certainly 48 hours after, because I think Boro was still in the dark on the Wednesday and certainly the Thursday. And then it's the Friday when it became clear, press conference cancelled, and then meetings taking place on the afternoon. Rob Edwards makes it clear he wants to speak to Wolves, and terms were agreed, as Boro released in a statement on Saturday. Reports from the Wolves end have since emerged saying it's a 3.5-year deal, and probably Tuesday we can expect confirmation. Before we get into the reaction and all that, Scott, let's just talk about the news side of things and how things have developed over the course of the last 2, 3, 4 days.
Yeah, well, I think one of the important things to say is that timeline is right. It's absolutely bang on. But even on Thursday night, Boro was still of the mindset that even if Wolves came in, they genuinely thought Rob Edwards would knock that back. And it was only really when things gathered apace on Friday and Rob Edwards eventually sits down in front of the hierarchy and says, I want to talk to Wolves, that it absolutely passed the point of no return. I think before it had got to that point, there was still a sense of the Boro hierarchy of, well, he's flirting with them a bit here, and we're not massively happy with the way this is playing out. But actually, when push comes to shove, we still think he'll stay. Well, that clearly didn't happen and hasn't happened. Now, understandably, there is immense frustration at the very top of Middlesbrough about the way that this has played out with Rob Edwards. Rob Edwards will no doubt, when he's unveiled at Wolves or when he does his first press conference at Wolves, he'll talk about the fact that it was an opportunity he couldn't turn down, Premier League job, emotional pull of Wolves, family, all of that, more money, all of that. It's still a pretty grim way for him to behave, really, isn't it? I don't think there's any getting away from that. Listen, we all know what football's like. We know what it's like as an industry. We know you've got to look out for yourself. But to do this 4 months after he's taken over, given what is, everything that he said, given what his shtick was. I mean, he came on here, didn't he? And said all the right things about the fans and the club and the size of the club and the passion that he felt for it. Well, you cannot help but feel that all of that was just hollow words that meant absolutely nothing. And it's just really disappointing that at the first kind of drop of a hat, he's left Boro. And that he's left Boro for a club and a job that you look at and think, well, is that in any way or shape, other than getting more money, a step up? Because from the outside, listen, he might go in and keep them up, in which case fair play. But from the outside, he has taken over a club that is destined for relegation and that is in absolute chaos off the pitch, as opposed to a job at Boro where promotion is a definite possibility. And it's not guaranteed, but it's a definite possibility. But it's stable, it's well run, and he would have been well looked after.
Well, I mean, you said there that there's frustration at the top. I mean, that is being kind, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a number of other words I could have chosen. I think it would not make it through the YouTube filters.
The other word that you used there, disappointment. And
yeah,
from all the conversations I've had with fans over the course of the last 4 or 5 days, and everyone you've talked to is saying the same thing, that they're just disappointed in him. And I think there's a feeling of frustration at emotionally buying into what he was about. I think that's the thing. I think it's almost feeling let down by him. I was on 5 Live on Saturday, and Dion Dublin said he's surprised that fans are surprised. The overriding emotion here isn't surprise, it's disappointment. Yeah. It's disappointment because Edwards has spent 4.5 months stressing, preaching togetherness, unity. We're a family. When he went on with Mark Drury on BBC Tees in July, he said he spoke about being the happiest man in the world. No, sorry, he feels like he's the luckiest man in the world. Well, all of that does not tally with a man who then leaves, regardless of the emotional, of the personal circumstances. And fans get that. Fans completely get that it's the family and it's your club. Although, let's be honest, this isn't someone who's made 500 appearances for him. And
exactly.
It's not Tony Mowbray going back to Boro, is it? No. But the family, fans get that. But it's after everything he said, the general reaction is, well, you can't have meant that.
Yeah. You
can't have meant that. You must have been playing the game. And I think that's it. The deep, deep frustration and disappointment, almost letting themselves buy into what he was about. I think that is the overriding emotion, isn't it?
Yeah, because, we can't forget that a lot of Boro fans were fairly sceptical about Rob Edwards coming in, if not unhappy with it. And yet, he had won a lot of those fans over, and he won them over, partly because of results, but I think more so because he was saying all the right things. You did feel that he got it. It was a marked difference to Michael Carrick in the way that he conducted himself in front of us when he went to talk-ins, when he met fans. It felt different. It felt genuine. Well, it clearly hasn't been, has it?
And I think the other thing, from the football perspective as well, all the family, again, get that. But Wolves are bottom, winless after 11 games. I would be staggered if Wolves stayed up this year. Staggered, because they're a really poor side. And on the most basic level, it's hard to see 3 teams that finish above. They're winless after 11 games. But then we go back to what we were saying last week on here. There's 27 Premier League games remaining. Rob Edwards, if Wolves go down, Rob Edwards will be associated with that relegation. You can't go in and say, there's 5 games left, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, it's all right, Wolves, and I might be made to look daft here. Let's see how the season plays out. But it's all right, Wolves bosses telling him what they're probably telling him now, or have told him, that he's going to get time. They're going to get patience. Even if things don't go to plan this season, he's the right man to rebuild. But if you have a long drag of a season where results don't pick up and you go down, and it's inevitable that you're going down from February, March, April onwards, once that rot sets in the stands, like, the damage might well be done by the summer. There's a couple of fans I've had a conversation with say it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he goes before the season's out, or certainly that come you go down and start next season poorly, 4, 5, 6 games, and that he's never able to get the fans back on board. It might not turn out like that, but I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, I was just going to jump in there and say I would not be surprised if he didn't see the season out, because he's not going in with Wolves. For all that there's this notion that he's a fan's favourite and it's emotional. Just from the cursory look I've had at the reactions from the Wolves end, I don't think Wolves fans are massively excited about the idea of Rob Edwards going in there. So if he starts with 5 defeats in a row, which is quite possible, I'm not even sure he necessarily gets to Easter, but I definitely don't think it's a guarantee that he sees the season out. And then, all of a sudden, he's a failed manager at Luton. He's a manager who's walked out on Middlesbrough and is untrustworthy because of that. And then he's a failed manager at Wolves. So listen, let's see. He might go and, Wolves might finish 10th and he might be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Yeah, let's see. But I'm completely with you. I from a job trajectory point of view for Rob Edwards, I don't think it's a move that makes any kind of sense.
And I think the other thing, and again, I know they say there's no loyalty in football and all that, which Yeah, kind of. I get a bit, but I also think it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that way. But I also think he should have remembered where he was at when Boro took him on. He should have remembered that a year ago yesterday, his Luton team lost 5-1 at the Riverside. And you were there that day, I wasn't. But I remember reading the quote. He spoke like a man afterwards who was expecting the sack.
I thought he was going to be going the next morning. I mean, he basically just completely given up the ghost.
It didn't come until 3 months later, but then he joins Boro in the summer as damaged goods. I mean, I'm not going to rewrite history. I was behind the appointment. I thought it was a good appointment from a football sense. That's been backed up by the start Boro have had. But he was damaged goods. He was without a job, and his Luton team had suffered relegation from the Premier League, and then he'd been associated with a second successive relegation to League One. I go back to what I said on countless occasions last week. Edwards could not have got a better job than Boro in the summer. He was not going to get a Premier League job. What's the next best thing? A stable championship club where you're going to get time, money, and you're going to be competing for promotion. Boro was the best he could have hoped for last week. And in the summer. And I think you just hoped last week that he'd remember that, really.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for Steve Gibson because he's put a lot. He's given him that opportunity, and he's backed him in the summer, and he would have backed him again. I'm pretty certain that that there would have been spending in January. I think there will.
Well, I know, but I joke, but we've got Adults and Malanda coming in.
Exactly. There's a start before you've even done anything. And to see his faith just dismissed so readily must be massively, massively annoying, frustrating, disappointing, whatever. Kieran Scott as well. Yeah. I mean, Kieran Scott will have pushed for Rob Edwards' appointment. And it's not because they're mates. They weren't mates, but they'd worked together. There was a relationship there. And Kieran Scott, genuinely felt Rob Edwards was the right man for the job. Well, in so many ways, he's been proved absolutely right, hasn't he? Rob Edwards has got Boro going. He clearly is a very, very talented coach. He's got Boro to second in the league. He had won the fans over. He had done all the right things. And yet that trust, that faith has been utterly betrayed. So, Kieran Scott must be livid at the minute as well, understandably so.
I
should say, and I've seen this from some quarters, not many, I don't think that this appointment going so, badly wrong, if you like, in that way, reflects badly on either of those people. I think it's really unfair to say about either Steve Gibson or Kieran Scott. You should have seen this coming. I've seen the idea that Rob Edwards walked out on Forest Green for Watford. They should have known what he was like. Well, I mean, that's a completely different story. Forest Green had won the league, and he was going to a team that are clearly, whatever you talk about loyalty, clearly leaving Forest Green for Watford is completely different for leaving Middlesbrough for a Wolves team that are at the foot of the Premier League. If he was going to Man United, I think we're having a different conversation. Yes, you'd be disappointed, but it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, like with respect, Forest Green are Forest Green, and it's the fact it's 4 months at Boro.
Yeah.
It's the fact it's 4 and a bit months.
Exactly. He'd won the league with Forest Green. He'd done the job with them. He'd taken them as far as anybody realistically is ever going to take Forest. I mean, they're back in the National League now, aren't they?
Yeah. So Saturday morning we get confirmation that terms have been agreed. Edwards is speaking to them. We get confirmation that Rob Edwards is going to be the next Wolves head coach, essentially. Yeah. And at that point, you're thinking, well, how is this going to affect today? How is this going to affect the game today against Birmingham? How's it going to affect the players? How's it going to affect Eddie Vivash? How's it going to affect the fans? Well, Chris Davies said it afterwards, the Birmingham boss. It galvanised everyone. And Davies said he realised pretty instantly that it had galvanised everyone. The atmosphere at the Riverside.
I was going to say, you were obviously there on Saturday. You covered the game for us. And I was ringing you on the night I did the Sunderland game up at the stadium, and I'm ringing you in kind of a debrief, and how was the day going and what it was like, and you were saying, do you know what? Like, that was a day that was a day that you will remember as quite a moment. Like,
the atmosphere was as good as I can remember it. The atmosphere was as good as the atmosphere. I think was probably as good as it's been since that playoff semi-final game, the Coventry game. That was brilliant. The chanting, which I won't repeat on here, the the banners. But then the way that the fans just got behind the team, and like, I know this is cliche and easy to say, but the fans undoubtedly contributed massively to Boro getting those 3 points on Saturday. The second half, the Boro were properly under the cosh. I mean, they finished with a centre midfielder, a right back, and a left back who was playing his second championship game in a 3-man centre half, in a 3-man defence against the Birmingham team that had won 2 games 4-0 on the bounce.
Yeah.
It was undoubtedly Boro's best win of the season, without doubt. And I just think it was so massively important to go into the international break, given everything, to go into the international break with a bounce. And I also think Eddie Vivash, given the uncertainty, spoke so impressively afterwards.
We'll get to
a couple of the highlights, really. We asked him what the last 48 hours had been like, and he said interesting. But most telling was the long pause that came before, rather than the word. But he downplayed his part massively and said, you know, the players were brilliant. I took a step back in the dressing room beforehand, and I wanted the players to speak. Dale Fry was great. The players did it on the pitch. Well, fair play to Vivash speaking like that, and the players do deserve immense credit, but so does he, because to bring the calm, really, to bring the calm and to settle everything down, but to also get the players on board, to also make sure that all those emotions were, I think, directed in the right way, because it's so easy, isn't it, to channel those directions, to channel anger in the wrong way in a game, in an instant like that. I think the way Boro channeled their emotions was great, and we'll talk about what comes next, but Vivash is going to stay, isn't he? Boro want Vivash to stay. You know, let's see what happens with the next head coach. But Boro want Eddie Vivash to be part of the coaching team going forward. You can see why, and I think what Vivash is a really, really safe pair of hands. If Boro don't have anyone in charge for Oxford, so be it. You would have complete faith in putting Vivash out there again, wouldn't you? And leading Boro going forward. We asked him, inevitably, does he fancy it? Would he fancy it? And he said, inevitably, the only thing on my mind right now is finishing this interview. And I think he said going for a glass of red wine. He was never going to answer that, was he? It was far too early. You've got to ask him the question, but he was never going to be able to be in a position to answer that. But Vivash is hugely popular with the players. He's hugely popular with the fans. And Vivash's arrival in the summer, for all there was indifference really about Rob Edwards' appointment, Vivash's arrival was celebrated, wasn't it? It really was celebrated by supporters. And I think it's going to be a major boost to still have him part of it moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's, we'll get to what happens next. But I think that there is a sense straight away in this that Boro are wanting to take their time. They're not wanting to rush into anything. They're more than comfortable with this process spinning out throughout the whole of the international break. And the reason they're so comfortable about that is because they now know that in Eddie Vivash, they've got someone who can hold the fort with absolutely no problem with that. I thought I'm with you. I thought he handled himself excellently over the weekend. They know he's a really good coach. The players clearly have an awful lot of respect for him. He will take training this week, admittedly with only about half a squad, obviously because of the international players being away. He'll take training at the start of next week as those players start coming back and attention shifts to Oxford. And then it'll be a case of, well, where are they in the recruitment process in terms of what happens from there? But there are, I wrote it last night, very, very strong indications from kind of right at the top of Boro that if Eddie Vivash wants to be part of any new managerial setup, then he will be. He might say, do you know what? Actually, a new man's coming in. I don't really think it's my place. I don't want to be fine. But if Eddie Vivash wants to be a part of it, and you suspect he will want to be, then he will be. Harry Watling, on the other hand, looks like he's going to head out the door to join Edwards at Wolves.
Yeah, and it was interesting at full time on Saturday because Boro did the lap of honour. Sorry, I thought I was on mute there for a minute. Boro did the lap of honour, or the lap of celebration. Sorry, appreciation.
Yeah.
At full time that they have done it at every home game this season, and they got to the south stand, and Dale Fry was leading the way. Fry's really stepped up this season. By the way, Fry's had a brilliant season, and he's
just when we're talking about the game, how fitting that Fry and Hackney were the two goal scorers.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you couldn't write that, could you?
No,
go on about Dale, yeah.
But then Fry came over to Vivash, and it was Fry who told Vivash to orchestrate the south stand with the fist pumps, really. And at that point, Harry Watling was at the back of the group, but I think it was Aidan Morris then who went back to get Watling and kind of pushed Watling forward, and Watling did the same again. But yeah, I, like we said last week, really, it was the classic studying the body language and trying to work out what was going on. George McCormack, great moment when he was celebrating as well. I mean, what a moment for him, 20-year-old from Redcar celebrating like that. So, right, what comes next? It's early, and from what we gather, very, very preliminary conversations is all that have taken place on this, isn't it? Because Boro, obviously, the priority was dealing with the Edwards situation and then the game on Saturday. The odds, I mean, for what they're worth, and they're not worth much at this early stage either, but as things stand, Gary O'Neill favourite, Tony Mowbray 3-1, Brian Barry Murphy 5s, Brendan Rodgers 5s, Carlos Corbran and Stephen Gerrard 6s, Alex Neil 8, and then you're going down and you're getting Paul Heckingbottom, Robbie Keane, Russell Martin, Dave Challoner, all the names that you'd expect in there, really. Are we to read anything into any of them at this early stage?
I don't think we read any. No, other than the fact that there's a couple of names very prominent on that list that are clearly out of work and so available now, aren't they? Gary O'Neill, Stephen Gerrard, very different types. You could argue that Gary O'Neill is a Rob Edwards-like appointment, whereas Stephen Gerrard is a Michael Carrick-like appointment. I mean, that's pretty simplistic, but two different ways in a way for Boro to go, you know. And I think part of the discussion will be, what do we want? Well, one of the things I've just written in a piece I've done today is that it's sounding very, very much again from sources kind of in and around Boro that what they want is a head coach rather than a manager. That's the decision that's been made. That's the way the club want to be, the way they want to operate. So to all intents and purposes, they want someone who will drop into the structure that Rob Edwards has just left. That could, Gary O'Neill or Stephen Gerrard could do that, couldn't they? Maybe it feels more like a better suit for O'Neill in that he is that type of coach. But either of them could fit into that. I think what that signals that they don't want is to go back to a Wilder/Warnock type, wizened, experienced championship boss who, yes, has been there and done it, but will probably want
what I say goes.
Say over recruitment, what I say goes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there's a pretty strong feeling that the door's been closed on that. Now, in terms of
understandably, I mean, Boro's model, Boro's structure, it's working. Rob Edwards talked again and again about alignment behind the scenes. Well, I know we're now questioning some of the things that Rob Edwards has said, but it has been clear over the last few months that there has been alignment off the pitch, and that has benefited
absolutely
Boro on the pitch, undoubtedly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Boro don't want is a massive upheaval to that. Now, in terms of the names you've quoted, and I'm not, I really don't think we're at the point yet where there is a short list of names. Clearly this has caught Boro on the hop a little bit, understandably so. That's not to say that they don't constantly monitor the kind of head coach market and who might be available. Of course they do. But that's very different to actually saying, right, now we need to go and do something. So there's certainly been no sounding out. There's been no formal approaches, nothing like that. I think what we'll see is 2 or 3 days where Boro work out exactly what it is they want, internal discussions about potential candidates. And then maybe by the back end of this week, we'll have a short list who, it might be a short list, it might be one person, but someone or some people who they want to more formally approach to then start the interviewing process and get to where they want to be. I think what we won't see is a short-term, hold the fort type appointment. There was a suggestion kind of in the immediate aftermath of the weekend, wasn't there? Well, might Tony Mowbray be the man to come in for a few games, for a month, for a couple of months, whatever, just to steady the ship and hold things together? I get the strong feeling here that Boro don't really want that anyway, that type of appointment. But B, if they need someone to hold the fort for a game, 2 games, 3 games, they probably feel now that Adi Vivash can do that. Yeah. Why bring that type of person in to do a job that he's shown he's more than capable of doing? So I don't think we're going to see that stopgap. I think we will see the next Boro manager, the head coach, rather. I bet I haven't just said that's what they want. I better get that right, haven't they? We'll see the next head coach. But we're not going to see them tomorrow. We're not going to see them the day after. I think it will be a process that they're willing to take their time on.
Because if Boro were 14th, 15th now, and you think, actually, you know what, we don't have the squad. We're probably not in a place where we're ready to challenge for promotion this season, but we're not going to get dragged into it at the bottom. Then you could probably look and think, well, actually, are we better off just getting someone in until the summer, then assessing our options if there isn't a standout candidate live, or if you can't get a candidate live now. But what an opportunity this season is for Boro. What an opportunity this season is. I know it's still too early to truly judge the championship, but Leicester and Southampton aren't as strong as what we thought they were going to be. Ipswich are finding the feet, but they're not as strong as what they thought we were going to be. Boro are second in the championship, having picked up 29 points from 15 games, and the championship probably looks as get-atable as it has been for a number of years. Boro's squad is probably as strong as it's been for a number of years. The job is always hugely appealing. The job to take charge of Boro is always hugely appealing for all the reasons we talked about at the start with Edwards. But hellfire, if you're a head coach out of work, or even a head coach in work, but maybe got your eyes elsewhere, then what an opportunity this is.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. You know, how often in football do you get to take over a squad that's settled, that's playing really well, that's second in a table with a massively realistic chance of promotion, where all the things that we've said about the Boro job and Steve Gibson still apply? You will be given time. You will be given a chance. You'll get a fair crack of the whip. You've got a new centre-half coming in January already, as we've alluded to. I strongly suspect there'll be money available for further strengthening and additions in January. I mean, what a chance for someone. But Boro need to get it right, don't they? You know, to be fair to them, Michael Carrick, you know, didn't work in the end. We've raked over that. But actually, for the first half of the Michael Carrick era, did work, didn't it? Really, you know, got them to the playoffs that first season, playing really exciting football.
Got Rob Edwards semi-final the second season.
Yeah, Rob Edwards, for all that, you know, it's ended acrimoniously. The idea of bringing Rob Edwards in was absolutely bang on. He did what they wanted him to do. He's clearly, you know, they clearly identified a talented coach who could do the job. So they just need to get it right again. And hopefully in getting it right again, this time they do get over the line.
I think what makes it difficult, or what's interesting, is normally if a manager goes after 5 months, you say, well, who else was in contention 5 months ago? Because the chances are they're going to be in contention again. But the three prominent candidates, as we reported in the summer, were obviously Rob Edwards, Danny Rowell and Steve Cooper. Well, Danny Rowell's gone to Rangers now, and Steve Cooper's not long gone to Bromby. And all the suggestions in the summer that was that Cooper was perhaps lukewarm on the idea rather than steaming hot. And it was suggested, wasn't it, in reporting this summer, that actually he quite liked the idea of going to manage overseas. Well, he's done that. He's gone to Bromby now. There were no other real roaring standout candidates in the summer, which I think makes it difficult now. And the other thing is, Steve Gibson has never taken a manager out of another club.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a first time for everything, but it's not something he's done before, which makes you think, you know, the safe bet is probably that it's going to be a manager who's out of work. I mean, let's see. This is a very different situation to Boro have been in before, so I don't think you can judge it on previous.
And I just want I just want to jump in there because, again, on that, I've seen a narrative kind of, well, that's just penny pinching, blah, blah, blah. I think a big part of it with Steve Gibson is that he would feel hypocritical having made such a big song and dance about other clubs coming to poach his managers. If he then does that, if he can identify a manager at a club where allowing them to leave would not be acrimonious, yes. But I don't think Steve Gibson wants to be that guy who constantly bangs the drum about the way that clubs behave, who then would go behind someone's back to get a manager out. I just don't think he wants to be that person. So, like you say, that's not to say that it's inconceivable that Boro would take a manager who's already in employment. They've considered that in the past. But I think for that to work, it would have to be a scenario where Gibson didn't feel like he was doing the dirty on another club, if you like.
Corberan's currently in work at Valencia, but might not be for very long, according to reports. They're struggling, but
he seems to be right on the brink, doesn't he? The 17th, I think I wrote today.
Yeah, but he's insistent, isn't he? My focus
Corberan's an interesting one. He's got a good championship CV, but it doesn't, it clearly isn't really working for him in Spain at the minute. You could see the appeal, couldn't you? Because he ticks that box of being a kind of innovative, young, dynamic head coach who would fit into the structure, but also has the added benefit of tried and tested in the championship, knows what the league's all about, has been there and done it. So he is one that you could see whatever boxes Boro need ticking, he's almost certainly going to tick a lot of them.
But he's also got quite a specific style, hasn't he? And he's extremely intense.
Yeah.
Would the timing be right? Does it feel like the right fit at this time? I'm not sure. Could you see him working with a Vivash? I mean, I don't know this. I haven't checked. But has he gone with his own staff everywhere else he's gone? Is he insistent? I don't know. I'd have to check that out.
Yeah.
Gary O'Neill. Let's just talk briefly about Gary O'Neill. Because whenever you talk about Gary O'Neill, you come back to those comments and golf and his admission in a podcast after he'd finished playing that he once got booked so he could watch the Masters on a weekend in April when he was a Boro player. Is that forgivable? Can that be managed? Does that mean he should never ever be considered to become Boro's head coach?
I'm not someone who pays to go and watch Middlesbrough every week. So I fully, I always, when I talk about fans and stuff, I always have to caveat it with the fact that if you pay your money, you've got every right to feel however you want to feel. And I don't pretend to second guess that or preach. That said, it feels a bit, if he's the right man, I don't think that should stop him from being Middlesbrough's manager. It's a stupid thing to have done. But to what extent? I sometimes I think when you see footballers on those type of post-career podcasts, how much of it's kind of bravado or I'll tell you a story and actually over-egging it a bit. But forget that side of it. All Gary O'Neill has to come out and do is say, look, it was a massively, massively stupid thing for me to have done. I really regret it. I regret having made light of it. I apologise unreservedly to Boro's fans about it. I really, really don't want that to sour our relationship. And I would like to think that most Boro fans would say, okay, well, do you know what? We'll give you a fair crack of the whip because it's a long time ago. It's in the past. We've all done stupid things. He'd have to address it. We'd have to ask him about it. It couldn't just be ignored.
Well, he'd surely know that he'd have to address it, wouldn't he?
You would think so, wouldn't you? You'd like to think so. The club certainly know because, O'Neill was certainly thought about when Carrick came in and all of that came out and I'm sure
the fan reaction to it is very much been...
We'll be well aware of that background to it.
Yeah.
If they were to think, though, that, do you know what? Aside from that, I actually think Gary O'Neill's the right man for the job, then my instruction to them will be, well, go for it and deal with that little bit of difficulty because it shouldn't be make or break. That's my view. What's yours? What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that, and I think it has been in Boro's think that has been in Boro's at the forefront of Boro's thinking in the past, the fan reaction, and a PR job was needed on Rob Edwards in the summer. Let's not get away from that. I think that was absolutely clear. Edwards knew that. Undoubtedly. And I think a PR job would be needed on O'Neill. Is that what you want at this stage of the season? That said, I think with a position Boro in, and maybe risk upsetting some of that momentum and feel good and the whole place feeling galvanized at the weekend. That said, I think you do deal with it straight away in your first press conference, and everything what you said there. I was young, I was naive, I was being daft, I was maybe trying to play up to the crowd a little bit on a podcast. I think two things. If you take that out of it now, O'Neill is probably the standout candidate. A Premier League boss who's done a good job at two clubs, and I think you look at the decline of Wolves. Really, take 3 months of Victor Pereira out of it, and you can see that it's been managed to climb there for a little while. That said, I think he'd always be 3 successive defeats away from it being brought up again.
Yeah, I accept.
Not with everyone, but with some fans.
No, I accept that, but to a certain extent, any manager's only really 3 or 4 defeats, successive defeats away from being under the caution, things being brought up, and I agree with you that politically there are far easier choices for Boro to make. Appointing Gary O'Neill in the short term makes life difficult for Boro. When you're right, it doesn't need to be. But if you think he's the right man in the long term, then a little bit of short-term difficulty shouldn't stop you from doing that, in my opinion. And that's not, I'm interested to see who else comes out there. I'm not saying I think Gary O'Neill should be the next manager, because I'm like you. I think that
we're purely speculating here.
He ticks a lot of the boxes, but I also think that, because of the position Boro are in, it would not surprise me if you got genuine interest from a caliber of candidate that maybe you haven't thought about in the past.
Yeah, that's it. And there will be candidates, an absolute bucket load of managers chucking their hat in the ring, won't there? An absolute.
Well, there was a certain Boro website that was touting a couple of names for it at the weekend. Did you not see that on the poll?
Would you be a suit or a tracksuit man in the dugout?
I am. Craig Stoddart, who was a Darlow fan who works at our place. Did you see his reply?
Yeah, go on.
He quite boldly said that I would be the gobby Jason Tyndall to your Eddie Howe. So we'll leave it like that and move on.
I'll tell you what I would do. And it must be hard to resist because the amount of managers you see wearing them, but I would resist any temptation to wear the pundit shoe. The manager pundit shoe that they all have on, just because I think I'd try and be a bit different. I'd try and be a bit different in the dugout.
Yeah, I think I'd be a suit man. I think I'd be a suit man ahead of a tracksuit.
Even as a first team coach, because I'm manager here, mate. You're first team coach.
It's gonna have to be a gilet then, isn't it?
Right. So it's Monday night, and because of how quickly things move in this sort of scenario, we might well jump back on at some point this week. We might well jump back on at the back end of the week. We'll try our very best to do so, because things will undoubtedly move, won't they, in the next few days. Yeah. So, as I say, all that chatter there, the last 15, 20 minutes on head coaches, we are speculating at the minute, because that's the position Boro are in. There are no obvious standout candidates yet. There hasn't been a shortlist drawn up. That might change in the next few days. So let's see. And
what we might do, I'm pinning you down here, but I'm doing the England game on Thursday night, but I won't be heading down to London. Maybe Thursday morning we'll jump on for a quick half-hour live, where if you as viewers have some questions, you can throw it at us, and we'll try our best to answer it. That might be an idea for maybe Thursday morning.
Yeah, let's book that in.
Get it in the diary.
Yeah, while just before we go, running across the bottom of the screen there is our latest offer to subscribe to the Echo. It's just £4 for 4 months, or 40% off an annual subscription. You might well have noticed that a lot of the stuff we've done over the course of the last weekend, the last few days, both news and feature analysis, has been behind the paywall. we massively appreciate. There's been a lot of subscriptions over the last few days, and we massively appreciate it, because we know, cost is going up for absolutely everything at the minute. Christmas is coming up. We know that the last thing you need to be able to do or want to do is fork out for something else. But it's just £4 for 4 months that will obviously see you through all of this, through January transfer window as well. And if you're like me and you spend far too much money on takeaway coffees, that's one coffee over the course of 4 months. Or if you go to some coffee shops, that's significantly less than one coffee for 4 months. So I know,
certainly at any of the services that we've name dropped so extensively in previous vids, you'll get nothing there for £4.
You absolutely won't. I know it's frustrating if you're used to logging on and getting stuff for free, but more and more of our stuff over the course of the last week or so has got, as you'd be able to see, has gone behind the paywall. So we do massively appreciate any support there. And thanks to those who have subscribed and who've let us know they've subscribed as well, and who've spread the word that they've subscribed. I've got a game of darts tonight, so I better wrap up.
Oh, have you?
It's
where are you playing at?
Well, it's a straight knockout competition tonight at the Chorus Club in Redcar. It's a 7:30 start, which means there's every chance I'm going to be home again for 8:30.
I don't believe it. You were telling me about your darting prowess the other week.
So we'll get this wrapped up.
What would your nickname and walk-on tune be?
Oh, can I think about this? I've
got you on the spot there.
Well, I remember when Duzza went to the PDC, and he was obviously desperate for Pigbag, but Adrian Lewis had it at the time. I'll get rid of that offer running at the bottom. So I don't think I'd go for Pigbag. I love We Shall Overcome, but I don't think it's going to get the Ali Pally booming, is it? In December. No. I've often thought, I can't believe none of them have got Not 19 Forever from the Cortinas.
Yeah.
You just need something that's getting
sing along, isn't it? Yeah,
booming,
exactly.
Yeah. To go for that.
Okay.
What would yours be?
I was on a stag do once, and we had to go as like our own darts players with our shirts made and that. And it's a fair while ago now, but I was Scott One Shot Wilson. And it was that, can you remember that tune that was I'm going to sing it now, so I apologize, but it was like my baby shot me down.
Down.
That was it for One Shot Wilson. So there you go.
I don't know about a nickname. Dare I say, suggest nicknames in the comments.
Yeah, come on, let's do it.
To be fair, if you've stuck with us for 43 minutes almost, then you're clearly a big fan of You Are My Boro. So feel free.
And you've clearly got nothing else to do, so you can spend the rest of the night thinking of a nickname for us. Yeah,
Vampire Weekend Day Punk as well, absolute belter.
Someone has that, I think, though, don't they?
Do they? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, a Vampire Weekend song, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I'll go and lose tonight without winning a leg. I'll be home at 8:30, and then we'll be back to it and see how things develop with Boro tomorrow and onwards. And then we'll come back. Yeah, let's say we're doing that. Then definitely we'll do a Thursday morning live vid, and we'll shout up on socials before we do it, so you know when it's going live.
Spot on.
Brilliant. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And thanks for all your support over the last few days. Enjoy the rest of your week. Keep your eyes on the Echo, obviously, for any breaking news and developments over the next few days. Take care.